he prevailed despite just enormous resources being mobilized to try and defeat him. I mean, it makes you wonder sort of how much would he have won by if all of this 9-to-1 spending hadn't been put against him. I mean, it's a very clear demonstration that even when they throw everything at it to try and destroy these progressive candidates, they can still win, which is a real testament to the strength of the movement.
In our next story, which is more exciting than the one we just covered. It's actually a positive one, and that is the story of Abdul El-Sayed, who is going to the Senate ballot in November. He won his Democratic primary. The progressive physician and epidemiologist beat Congresswoman Haley Stevens in Michigan's Democratic Senate primary this week, a race that became, by any measure, the most expensive Democratic primary in American history. That's in spite of 6 outside groups spending over $60 million backing Stevens. It was, I believe, a 9-to-1 spending advantage over El-Sayed. Half of that, $32 million, came from AIPAC Super PAC alone. That is more than any single group has spent in a federal Democratic primary this entire cycle. AIPAC broke its own record to try and stop this man, and it didn't work. El-Sayed won narrowly by about a point, but he won, and he wasn't alone. Down the ballot, William Lawrence, a Sunrise Movement co-founder who campaigned with El-Sayed and called for the U.S. to stop arming Israel, took a battleground House nomination. Donovan McKinney, another El-Sayed ally, knocked off an incumbent who was backed by the establishment. 3 progressive wins in one night in a swing state. The establishment's response: they're already moving the goalposts, and AIPAC is signaling it'll spend again, even bigger this time in November, to back the Republican. Our next guest has been following Abdul El-Sayed for nearly a decade, since his 2018 governor's run, and recently reported from Michigan on the Senate race for the nation. He's also the editor-in-chief of the fantastic outlet Current Affairs. Nathan Robinson, welcome to BT Live.
Hey, so nice to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on. There's so much to talk about here, and you've been covering Abdul El-Sayed for a very long time, as I mentioned, since 2018 when he ran for governor. You were just on the ground in Michigan speaking with him for the nation. And for people who only caught the headline, I want to ask you to start off here. What is the significance of what happened Tuesday, and why does this particular race matter beyond Michigan?
Yeah, it's huge, right? Because, I mean, we know there's been a wave of progressives winning in elections in various places. We know that Mamdani, of course, won in New York City, sent shockwaves through politics there. But of course, there was always this argument. This is confined to the coastal enclave cities. Michigan is not in the coastal enclave. And what has been demonstrated is that this is happening there as well. And the extraordinary thing, which you laid out a little bit there in your introduction, is that he prevailed despite just enormous resources being mobilized to try and defeat him. I mean, it makes you wonder sort of how much would he have won by if all of this 9-to-1 spending hadn't been put against him. I mean, it's a very clear demonstration that even when they throw everything at it to try and destroy these progressive candidates, they can still win, which is a real testament to the strength of the movement. And you know, I think a lot of Democrats are beginning to acknowledge this. I mean, they all fell in line behind El-Sayed the moment he won. And what you're seeing is that there's a lot of panic, a lot of freaking out, a lot of Wall Street Journal op-eds going, oh, this is real, this is happening. And Abdul has demonstrated that there's something to be reckoned with here.
Well, let's talk about money, because the sheer amount of money that was thrown to defeat Abdul is insane, right? AIPAC Super PAC broke its own single race spending record trying to defeat him, spent over $30 million, like Rania said a few minutes ago, and they still lost. So do you think this is a turning point for AIPAC's power in Democratic primaries, or do you think it's wishful thinking? Because they're clearly not packing up, and they're already signaling that they're going to back Mike Rogers, who's the Republican who's running against him in the general. And their candidate did manage to defeat Cori Bush in Missouri. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the Cori Bush race showed that AIPAC's influence is still there. Its money still can. I mean, and I think in Abdul's race, their money bought a lot. It bought a very, very close race. It could have gone the other way. They could have prevailed. And there are certainly some people in AIPAC who think, well, we probably should have just spent another $20 million. I mean, when I was in Michigan, I saw what that money was actually buying. And what that money was buying was essentially mailers, TV ads, and paid social media advertising. The message, the essential message of all of which was Abdul is a misogynist. Abdul hates women was the central message. It was not about Israel. They don't mention Israel. They don't even say they're AIPAC. They say they're the United Democracy Project. They were pushing one single message, and every voter had heard it. Everyone had seen these commercials. They were on in every single break. And I don't think AIPAC is going to come away from this thinking, well, that wasn't very effective. We need to give up, because I think it was quite effective. It really did make it very hard. It's only because Abdul is, I mean, I've been following him since 2018 because he is an uncommonly talented politician. He is very charismatic. He is very smart. He is very strategic. He is a force to be reckoned with. And I think it's only because Abdul is such a singular organizer and politician that he was able to overcome what AIPAC threw at him.
You know, actually, since you say that, like, he's so effective, you have so much concern about this guy. There's a clip I want to show of JD Vance talking about Abdul El-Sayed. It's a very short clip. Can we put that up real quick?
We don't want the next administration, whoever, you know, God forbid, you're going to have President El-Sayed in 3 years. We don't want him to undo all the incredible work that we've been doing.
I mean, it's great to hear that, right? Because he would undo it, right? But I also think, you know, Abdul El-Sayed, I gotta say, the guy has the quality to him that he could go even further. I'm sure he's got ambitions too. Let's see what happens. And unlike Mamdani, I think he was, you know, born in the U.S. or born a U.S. citizen, so he actually could. The guy could run for president one day. All that's to say, there's the electability argument, Nathan. This is the narrative Wednesday was incredible for its quick pivot because, you know, El-Sayed won, but suddenly the story became that he didn't win by enough. And you make a really good point. Like, it was narrow. And when you looked at the polling ahead of this election, I mean, every poll except for like one or two showed him up by like 10 or 15 points. So I think it was really surprising for a lot of us to watch it be as close as it was. But all that's to say, that money, those attack ads do work, but he still won. So that the goalpost shift, you know, goes to, oh, but it wasn't by enough. So it doesn't actually mean the left won anything. And, you know, that goalpost shifting seems more like damage control to me from people who spent $60 million and lost. But then the broader question here is their electability argument, which is another argument they were making throughout the campaign and might still continue to make. You know, they'll say that, okay, maybe this guy can win a primary, fine. But the reason moderates and centrists are better in these swing states is because they have a greater chance of beating the Republican in the general and appealing to all those moderates. So I want to ask you, you know, how do you respond? Because you've written about this. How do you respond to this argument? Ironically, by the way, it should be pointed out, this argument's coming from the same class of, you know, strategists and consultants who lost to Donald Trump twice. But how do you respond to this electability argument?
Yeah, well, there's two parts. The first part is, are centrists electable? And the second part is the case against progressive electability true? And I think there are reasons to believe that centrists aren't quite as electable as they suggest. Obviously, Hillary Clinton defeated Bernie Sanders in part on the argument that she was more electable because she was more moderate, you know, but also she is a very uninspiring establishment candidate who was under investigation by the FBI. So that kind of factors into electability, but they don't want you to talk about those kinds of aspects of electability. Haley Stevens, I think actually her electability was overstated because her campaign was so propped up by AIPAC dollars that would have disappeared in the general election, because we're seeing AIPAC actually against El-Sayed, they're pro-Mike Rogers. Against Mike Rogers, they might not even have supported Haley Stevens. So that would have been sort of the collapse of most of her campaign funding overnight. I don't actually think she would have been that electable because she was a pretty bad candidate. She didn't have many events. She didn't have good on-the-ground organizing. I think Abdul I suspect his electability is being understated by people who underestimate him, right? So they point to polls showing he did like a couple points less against Mike Rogers than Haley Stevens, but the campaign hasn't happened yet. And what people don't understand is that Abdul has a very, very focused message that is targeted in on all of the things that Michiganders care about, which is centrally their economic well-being, right? He has a three-part platform. It's money out of politics, money in your pocket, Medicare for all. He says it over and over and over again. And we've seen that so far, Mike Rogers' response to this has been to try and associate Abdul El-Sayed with Osama bin Laden, which he did explicitly, and to accuse him of being a Trojan horse for communism. And I think Abdul is a smart enough, a savvy enough politician to where he knows how to counter those attacks. And I think Mike Rogers is kind of playing right into his hands with the going straight for the Islamophobia, which works on a certain subset of voters. But I think Abdul's bet, and I think it's a good one, is that most voters, if you put Islamophobia up against here's my agenda to deliver real economic gains for you and your family, the latter is going to win.
Mm. Well, I'm interested to hear your take about the future of the Democratic Party. Democratic Party consultant James Carville, he's been very vocal that he is not going to be in the same party as someone like Hassan Piker. And underneath all of that is the question around Israel, right? Carville has said that he's fine with people questioning some of Israel's policies, but he won't be in a party with people who think that Israel does not have a right to exist. But polling on the issue shows that the Democratic base is with Abdul El-Sayed on this one. So Democratic Party takeovers haven't historically worked. But do you think there's enough room in this party? Is it big enough of a tent to fit people who are both pro-genocide arms sales to Israel, along with the anti-genocide wing? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, what Mamdani and El-Sayed have said is actually they welcome anyone who wants to support them. It's interesting that all the divisive, like, get out of the party messaging has come from James Carville and the centrists, who I think sense quite correctly that their reign is coming to an end after the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016. A lot of people really felt, oh, you can't beat the establishment. They're always going to squash you. But what we've discovered over the last few years is that actually the party was quite hollow, right? They'd given up on organizing. They go to Democratic Party meetings. They just text you for money. And that money is kind of funneled to a consultant class. And they were quite weak. And it looks like they're fairly easy to overthrow. It's true that it's not the Hassan Pikers who are out of step with the people who are the Democratic Party base. It is the James Carvilles. According to the polling, since Israel began the genocide after October 7th, Democratic Party opinion on Israel has quite rightly absolutely plummeted. Democrats perceive Israel now as a state that is engaged in war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. And most Democrats are humane people in a very basic way, and they don't like that. And yet they're willing to say, James Carville, you could stay in our party. But James Carville would want to say, oh, no, I want to get the majority out so that we can keep this party to be the narrow domain of those who want to continue funneling weapons to a genocidal state. And I just think the majority of Democratic voters are going to totally reject Carville, and they're going to say, well, don't let the door hit your ass on your way out of the party.
Well, we will definitely have to see where the chips fall too as it heads into the general. Like, I think I saw Kamala Harris now endorse Abdul, if I'm not mistaken, ahead of the general. So you're going to see some people who actually do want a Democratic takeover of the Senate line up behind him. I think you're going to see some really petty people either stay silent or in the case of AIPAC, by the way, it looks like they're signaling they will be throwing a lot of money behind Mike Rogers. So we'll see how all that plays out. Go ahead. You have something you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I just want to point out, AIPAC has said that Abdul El-Sayed is a direct threat to the U.S.-Israel relationship, and they are correct about that. They should be supporting Mike Rogers from their own perspective, because Mamdani doesn't have that much power to affect the U.S.-Israel relationship. Abdul El-Sayed is going to be in the United States Senate. They do control whether the U.S. continues to fund Israel. And so AIPAC is right to consider Abdul El-Sayed's rise to power as the biggest serious threat to U.S. support for Israel that we have seen. And for those of us who think, it couldn't be soon enough that the U.S. would cut off weapons aid to a genocidal government, this is an incredibly encouraging sign that we're actually building real political power towards achieving that objective.
It's about damn time. But talking to everybody from Lebanon, let's make it happen quicker, folks. I don't know what's going to be left once we get there, but this is very, very good, good positive movement in the right direction. Nathan Robinson, in charge of current affairs, a fantastic magazine. There it is. Also, you have a YouTube channel, which I will be writing for. Everybody stay tuned. Very excited for that. Very excited for that collab. And also, everybody go check out the YouTube channel. You do some really great interviews over there. Really appreciate you, Nathan. Thank you so much.
See ya.